Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Echo Live, coming to you from the Michigan Science Center. My name is Anna, and today we're going to explore one of my favorite topics on today's Echo Live, which is anatomy. So we're calling this lesson Anatomy Academy. So we're going to learn a little bit about just one of our very important human body systems today. Today we'll be talking about digestion. So today is going to be a pretty fun lesson. Anatomy is actually one of my very favorite topics in general. This is what I went to school to study in college. And so we're going to break it down into some smaller pieces throughout Echo Live in the coming weeks. Today we're talking about digestion. But before we get started with the lesson today, we did want to ask a very important question to our viewers that are watching here on Zoom and through our Facebook Live. We'd like to know, is this a good time to host our Echo Live programs every day? We'll be posting a poll on our Facebook page right after the program today, and we'd like to know if 2:30 p.m. Eastern is a good time to host our Echo Live programs, or if you might prefer that we host them during the morning. So we want you to vote either way. If 2:30 is a good time for you and you enjoy tuning in at this time every single weekday, vote for that in this poll that will come out later today, or let us know in the chat, let us know somehow. If you are watching this maybe later on because 2:30 is not the best time for you, let us know that in the poll or over the chat. Let us know somehow. We really want to take your feedback. These programs are for you at home watching, and so we want to do them at a time that works with your schedule while you are enjoying and engaging in science at home. So let us know what you think. We'll be posting that poll later today. So let's dive right into our lesson today, which is on digestion. There are several human body systems, but digestion might be one of my favorites to talk about because digestion is a human body system that we actually get to enjoy. So I know that I enjoy eating. I have a few favorite snacks that I enjoy eating and then digesting. If you have a favorite snack, go ahead and post that in the chat for me. Tell me, what is your favorite snack or your favorite food for dinner? Tell me, what is your favorite food? I'll keep an eye on those, and we're going to come back to those answers a little bit later on down the road during our program. So go ahead, start practicing using that chat feature either on Zoom or on Facebook. Let us know your favorite food. Great place to start. So we'll be doing 2 simulations of our digestive system here on Echo Live today. I have a very special volunteer who's actually volunteered to let us explore their digestive system. Since we're talking about the human body and the human digestive system, Penguin Pete and Keyboard the Cat both aren't great models for this system, so I had to find a different volunteer. This volunteer is perfect for this demonstration, and you will see why. So our volunteer for today's digestive demonstration is Frankie, Frankenstein's monster. So Frankie here is going to volunteer to let us kind of explore his digestive system, since we can actually remove and replace some of Frankie's human body parts without harming him. So Frankie did volunteer for this. He's going to be totally okay, and don't worry, we'll put him completely back together when we're done today. So we're going to start by talking about the digestive system. But we said that this process includes our favorite foods, right? So to start the digestive process, there's a very important first step that you have to take in order to ingest your food. So tell me in the chat, what is that very important first step if we want to ingest food? What do we have to do? So think about that question. When you figured it out, type it in the chat. And while you do that, I'm going to prepare for our surgery here on Frankie. We're looking for what is the first step in ingesting our food? What do we have to do? I'm seeing some great answers for our favorite foods. I'm seeing that Emma's favorite food is Doritos, which is also my favorite food. So good answer there. And now I'm starting to see some really awesome answers for this question, which is, what is the first step in our digestive process, which is put it in your mouth, right? You have to take a bite. So the first step in our tour of the human digestive system is the oral cavity, or the mouth. Now, there's a lot in your mouth that goes on when it comes to this process of digestion. So we're going to share a diagram here of the oral cavity. And you'll notice that there are some very important labeled pieces. We know that if we're taking a bite of something, right, we have to use our teeth, especially if what you're eating is pretty large and needs to be broken into smaller pieces, or if it's something that's hard that you have to chew with your molars in the back, right? So that teeth are really important for grinding up our food, for breaking it down into smaller pieces. We call this step mechanical digestion because it's taking that mechanical energy of using the muscles in our mouth to actually chew up our food, to break it into small pieces. Mechanical digestion is almost as important as chemical digestion, but there's also chemical digestion that happens in the mouth. So we have mechanical from using our teeth and our tongue to kind of move around our food, but we also have what we call our salivary glands. So there are 3 types of salivary glands. Here's one, here's the other, and here's the last one. And the salivary glands produce saliva. Now, saliva is mostly water. So here's another diagram of those salivary glands, which we call accessory organs to our digestive system. But these salivary organs have a very important job. They mostly secrete water. It's about 99% water in your saliva and maybe about 1% of chemicals like enzymes, like amylase. But that saliva is there to actually moisten your food, whereas mechanical digestion breaks up your food and increases its surface area. Then the water and the saliva can come in and they can actually moisten the food, which prepares it for more chemical digestion down the road. So I have a pretty cool video or a simulation of how that digestive process gets started inside your oral cavity. So this is a simulation. It might look a little bit gross, but it's very, very fascinating that we can actually see how this process works. So here it is. We've got food inside the mouth being broken up into pieces by the teeth. And you can see that this person has a good deal of saliva that's also starting to moisten the food. Now, all of our diagrams and the animations that I'm showing you today are from this visiblebody.com. Visiblebody.com is a great resource if you're interested in learning more about anatomy. They've got breakdowns of all the human body systems and virtual tours of these human body systems as well. So I highly recommend this virtualbody.com if you're looking for more anatomy resources. Now, after our digestion process starts in our mouth, right? We have to then swallow our food. The muscles in our mouth actually help us to create what we call a bolus or a big clump of food that we can then swallow, and the food moves down our esophagus. So our esophagus is right here in this diagram behind me, and it's a pretty long tube. In a full-grown adult, the esophagus is almost a foot long. It's about 10 inches long, which is a pretty long distance to travel. So how do you think we get the food down our esophagus? How do you think our food moves down the esophagus to get to the next step? Any guesses that you might want to throw in the chat? Let me know. I'm looking through a lot of our favorite foods here, and I am so excited that you guys made some awesome suggestions. Yeah, we swallow it, right? We said that we're relying on muscles. So there are muscles in the very back of your mouth near your pharynx that help you to swallow it. And then you continue to use those muscles to carry your food all the way down your esophagus. It's not just gravity that pulls our food down through your esophagus, right? I see that Suzanne's telling me that muscle contractions actually move the food. So if you think about, right, our digestive system doesn't just work when we're standing upright, like in my model or on my diagram behind me. If you've ever eaten maybe your Doritos, sitting on the couch or laying on the couch watching your favorite show, right, we know that this digestive process still works even when we're laying horizontal to the ground, not just when we're standing upright and vertical. So we can't just rely on gravity to pull our food down that throat. We actually rely on muscles. So there are muscle contractions that will actually squeeze your food as it moves down the esophagus to the stomach. So I have one more animation to show you on how that muscle contraction works. This muscle contraction is called peristalsis. And peristalsis is the word for these muscles that surround the esophagus. that actually squeeze your food and cause it to travel down that long tube. So it happened pretty quickly. If we go back just one more time here and hit play, we can see that there's a movement of muscles as the food travels down. You can think of it kind of similar to how a snake actually moves around the ground, right? We have circular muscles and longitudinal muscles that coordinate with each other to actually pull your food downwards until we said it reaches the stomach. So the stomach is the next part of our human body digestive system that we're going to talk about. And we can actually take out Frankie's digestive system right here. So he does have a stomach lodged in here, which is where the food reaches next after it travels down our esophagus. The stomach is one of the most important organs in our digestive system. We said that we add a small amount of enzymes in the mouth, but the majority of our enzymes and stomach acid that we use for chemical digestion happen in the stomach. So we're familiar with stomach acid. If you think back to our pH demonstration that we did last week when we talked about at-home science, we know that certain things can be acidic and certain things can be basic. Your food can be, but having that acid in your stomach allows a chemical reaction to take place, which actually starts to break down some of the nutrients in our food. So we have Frank's stomach. We'll go ahead and set that over to the side. But tell me in the chat, what do you know where our food lands next after the stomach? If you can read my diagram here, you might know the answer. But we said that the stomach was responsible for most of that chemical digestion. Now our food has been broken down into what we call chyme, C-H-Y-M-E, which is that kind of gross substance that is then passed on to the next part of our digestive system. Let's see. It is the small intestine. You are exactly right. So if you read this diagram, if maybe you're familiar with our digestive system, we know that the small intestine comes next. Now, does anyone have a guess for how long the small intestine might be? How long is the small intestine? You can see that it's kind of coiled up here in our diagram. We're looking for an answer of how long. If we were to stretch out our small intestine, how long would it be from the stomach until it ends? So I'll start pulling out Frank's small intestine here. Think about it. Tell me how long, how many feet maybe? Ooh, got quite a bit of small intestine in here. Let me go ahead and kind of start draping it around. Oh, wow. There's a whole lot in here. Let's see. We've got even more small intestine. So we've got quite a bit and it's still coming. How long do you think the small intestine is going to be? Really long is a great guess. It is really long, as we're starting to find out. Jim tells me 20 feet, and you are almost exactly dead on. This small intestine is about 22 feet long in the average human adult. So I've coiled it up here, but we can see that this small intestine is really long. And the small intestine is actually where most of our absorption of nutrients takes place. So while the stomach did most of the breaking down of those foods and provided that chemical reaction to turn food into nutrients that we want to absorb, things like vitamins and calcium, but now the small intestine is where we're actually going to absorb those things. So your food will travel through the small intestine and it will absorb those nutrients that your body wants to collect as it goes. The small intestine also relies on peristalsis, that movement of muscles, so those circular and longitudinal muscles. It relies on those same muscles or same types of muscles that your esophagus did in order to push the food through. The small intestine is very long, right? So, and we definitely can't rely on gravity. If we look at our diagram over here, gravity wouldn't necessarily help us. So we really need that movement of our muscles. All right, now, if the small intestine was 22 feet long, tell me, how long do you think the large intestine is? So small intestine, 22 feet. Large intestine, how many feet? Go ahead and tell me in the chat. I'll start kind of putting Frankie's small intestines back in here. But go ahead, tell me, how long is the large intestine going to be? Get it nice and coiled up in here. See some great guesses, 44 feet, 42 feet. Yeah, so you're thinking if the small intestine was 22, right? We could think that maybe the large intestine is maybe almost double or even more. 50 feet, such great guesses coming through in the chat. 50 or 60 feet. I've had people tell me maybe 100 million feet, but it's actually only about 5 feet long. So we'll go ahead and we'll take out Frank's large intestine here. And this large intestine is really only about 5 feet long. So you can tell if you compare the two why we call this one the large intestine and why we call this one the small intestine. So we'll hold them up next to each other, and you can tell that it's not about the length, it's actually about the circumference. So the large intestine is much wider, much larger around than the small intestine was, even though it's not longer. So the large intestine is only about 5 feet long, and this is kind of the last step in our digestive process. The large intestine does the very last bit of absorption of things we might need from our food. So things like water are absorbed in the very last step here in our large intestine. So Frank is just about done being our volunteer here. Let's go ahead and pack his organs back up inside to make sure we leave him just as good as we found him. Really tuck that large intestine back in, wrap it all the way around our small intestine. And yet people are kind of surprised, but really only 5 feet of large intestine. That's really all we need. The small intestine is much larger because we said that's where all of our important absorption takes place. So all of our nutrients are absorbed there, and things like water come last. And so we only need about 5 feet of intestine in order to do that. Very last thing, go ahead and put his stomach right back on top where it meets his esophagus. And then we'll go ahead and we're gonna set Frank back down behind our table. Thank you so much, Frank, for being such a good volunteer. We might get back to Frank a little bit later on in Echo Live. Don't worry, Frank loves being taken out for these kinds of demonstrations, so you don't have to worry about him. So we're going to talk about our next model of digestion next. But first, this is a great time to pause for any questions that you might have. So if you do have questions about the parts of the digestive system that we've talked about so far, go ahead and tell me in the chat. As always, while we pause for questions here between our demonstrations, this is a great time for us to thank our sponsors like the DT Energy Foundation. The Michigan Science Center is very, very lucky to have some amazing sponsors who allow us to continue bringing these Echo Live programs to you at home for free every weekday at a time TBD, either at 2:30 p.m. or perhaps in the morning, depending on what you think. If you are fortunate enough to be able to donate to the Michigan Science Center right now, we do rely on membership sales and donations. And so we would love if you made a donation to the Michigan Science Center as well. So thank you so much to our donors and our individual donors, people like you who are just loving and enjoying these programs. Thank you guys all so much. So let's check on our questions here. Let's see if we had any good questions. Is it possible for food to get stuck in your digestive system? And the answer is absolutely. Hopefully not stuck forever. That could cause a big problem, right? If you did have a blockage, but that does happen if maybe you eat something that isn't necessarily considered edible. So I know this is common in pets. So if you've ever had a pet that has eaten something they shouldn't, it can block up your intestines, and sometimes you have to have surgery in order to remove it. Another really important thing to note is that you can also stop your own digestive system by not eating the correct amounts of nutrients. So our body relies on fiber really specifically to keep food flowing through our digestive system and passing on as it goes. So make sure you eat lots of fiber, make sure you're eating a healthy, balanced diet, and that will help to make sure that nothing gets stuck inside your digestive system. Becky asked, do sweet and salty food break down differently from each other? And the answer is yes. So depending on the chemical composition of your food, Some things are easier to break down, some things are more difficult. Some things rely on an acid-base reaction that takes place between your stomach acid and the food in order to break it down into its nutritional parts. But sweet and salty do have different chemical structures, and so they do also have different times that they take to break the food down, and different kind of proficiency. So how much nutrients you get out of certain types of food. I'm not seeing any questions yet in our Zoom chat. So if you do want to ask a question in Zoom, make sure you're typing it in the chat feature there. I'll keep an eye out. But we have some other questions. Do we really need organs? Yes. There are certain organs that you're born with that are not necessarily needed. Some parts of your human body system you can get away with having only one of if you were born with two, or we can substitute certain things thanks to modern medicine, but all of our human body organs do have a role in our body. That's why we've kind of developed this set of organs, and they now haven't changed since we depend on them so much for our human body systems. Let's see. If you swallow gum, does it get stuck somewhere for 3 years? The answer to that is no. That is a myth that adults sometimes tell kids, and kids tell other kids. It's something that I was told when I was growing up for a very long time. But I actually heard that if you swallow gum, it gets stuck for 7 years, like bad luck. But it actually doesn't. Since there's no nutritional value in gum, that's why we say we shouldn't swallow it. It can also be one of those things that does block up your small intestine. It takes a lot of contraction in order to move a large wad of gum. So we don't digest gum. There's no enzyme in your body that will actually digest gum, and so you'll actually pass it whole. So you should not swallow your gum. Even though it won't get stuck inside you for 3 years, it could cause you some other problems. So please never swallow your gum. Always spit it in the trash, since it doesn't get broken down by nature either necessarily. Why is the large intestine smaller than the small intestine? It just has to do with the importance or how many nutrients they're trying to absorb. So the small intestine is responsible for most of the important digestion of nutrients from food. So you want to commit as much surface area as possible to that small intestine. So since the small intestine has much more surface area, since it's so much longer, we can absorb more of those important things from our food. The large intestine is mainly responsible for absorbing water, and so we can do that in a much shorter length of intestine. Someone asked, can we play the videos again? We'll go ahead and we can play them again, both really quickly. So the first one was our oral cavity here. And again, these videos are from visiblebody.com. So if you would like to explore this website, it is a great resource for learning about human anatomy. So we'll go ahead and we'll play the oral cavity video one last time. We can see that we have mechanical digestion that takes place as our teeth and our tongue move around the food, and that chemical digestion takes place from the water and the saliva. See, we'll play our other video, our peristalsis video, one last time as well. And so this video is showing off those muscles that surround the esophagus. So this open space is your esophagus. It's that long 10-inch tube that leads from your oral cavity, your mouth, down to your stomach. The watches, they contract. They actually contract right where the food is. And it actually carries the food down your stomach. So again, those animations can all be found on visiblebody.com if you're looking to watch them again or have some more information about them. So we do have one very last demonstration. We'll keep checking on questions there in the chat, but I do have a way that you can simulate the digestive system at home using some very simple materials. So for this, we'll need a few things. You'll need a large container. You'll need some sort of liquid. I chose vinegar for this to simulate my stomach acid because this vinegar is acidic, just like stomach acid is. We need one of these kind of mesh stockings. And so this is just a small mesh stocking, just the foot part, or you can cut an old pair because you only need a small piece of this. So we've got our liquids, we've got our container, and then you'll also need some food and a Ziploc bag. So I've chosen a burger for this demonstration. So the burger has bread, which is full of sugars. There's some pickles and cheese. Cheese is full of fats. There's some onions on there. And then, of course, the beef in the patty is full of protein. Now, if you're like me, you like lettuce on your patties. And so I'm going to go ahead and place my lettuce right there on my burger. And we're going to simulate our digestive process using this, doing so inside this Ziploc bag. So we'll go ahead and I'm going to open my bag just to start. And the first step we said was mechanical digestion. It was actually breaking down food into smaller pieces. Yes, this is real food. It is a burger. So we're just going to go ahead and simulate that by ripping up our burger just into a few pieces and tossing it down inside the Ziploc bag. We said that in the mouth, there's just a small amount of water from our saliva. And then we're really going to simulate that mechanical digestion by mashing up this food. It's really gross. It looks really gross. I'll give you a little bit closer view in just a moment here. But really, we're just simulating that mechanical digestion that takes place in the mouth right now. So we've got some kind of broken down food. Some of the simple sugars, like the sugars in the bun, are actually broken down in the mouth from your saliva. But to really break down this food, right, we need a lot more liquid. So we're actually going to add our vinegar as our next step. I'm going to pour some of it in here. There's a lot of acid in your stomach, and that's really going to aid in that chemical digestion, where we're actually going to start breaking down the food into its nutrients. So I'm going to set this on the table here. If you're kind of queasy, look away for just a moment while we mash up our food and really combine it with that vinegar, or what we're calling our stomach acid. Now, if you don't want to use vinegar for this demonstration, water will work just fine. You might just have to mash it up just a little bit more. So now we've got our chyme, that stuff that we said our stomach creates to be passed on to our small intestine. So the stocking is going to simulate our intestines in this demonstration. So it's nice and porous, meaning that it's going to allow our food to move through it, but at the same time, it's going to absorb some of that food or let those important nutrients pass through it into our body. Yes, RIP to the burger. Does certainly not look very appetizing now. So we'll go ahead, and I've already connected a stocking here to a funnel. If you'd like to try this at home, you probably don't need the funnel. You could have someone else in your house try to help you by just holding open your stocking. But since I'm working alone here in my studio, we're just going to go ahead and take that mixture, pour it into the funnel, set our bag off to the side, and then we're just going to try to pass as much of our food as we can down into the stocking. So it's going in there very, very slowly, but you can see that the stocking is starting to create some of that absorption that we talked about that takes place in our intestines. So our food is moving through the funnel. And if we really want to simulate this process, right, our hands can act as that peristalsis, right, that muscle contraction that helps to move our food along. And so we can squeeze the food, get lots of digestion taking place. Kind of a gross demonstration, right? But this happens in your body all the time. There's nothing gross about this process. It is critical for human life. But digestion is not perfect. It's not a perfect process, right? Meaning we're still at the end of our digestive system. We're still left with some waste, which is contained here inside our stocking. So all the things that the body doesn't absorb, everything that we didn't collect for nutrients or for water, right, we have to expel, or we call that elimination when we're talking about digestion. So we know that not everything gets absorbed in our digestive process. Foods like the pickles and the lettuce, those are actually still left in the stocking whole because they're so fibrous and our body isn't really able to break them down, those plant starches. We're not able to digest them, so we actually just pass them through our system. The very last thing we'll talk about before we head out today is just how long this process takes. So chewing our food takes about a minute, maybe even less. I'm sure you know that the longer you chew your food, right, the less good it tastes. So then we chew our food for about a minute, and then it only takes 2 to 3 seconds for our food to move all the way down our esophagus and reach the stomach for chemical digestion. That chemical digestion takes about 2 to 4 hours to really mix our food with that stomach acid before it's passed on to the small intestine for nutrient absorption. It takes it about 3 to 5 hours to move all 22 feet through the small intestine. And then that last step, elimination, takes just over 10 hours. But this last step can take different times depending on your diet, depending on your age, depending on a variety of factors. Since we're already here talking about grossology, the science of the human body, here's one more experiment that you could try at home. One of the most noticeable foods that we don't break down inside our body that we just eliminate later on is corn. So if you've ever eaten corn, you know that the time you eat it is not necessarily the last time that you see it before it's gone forever. So if you know what I mean, the next time you eat corn for dinner, write down exactly what time you ate that corn at, and then keep an eye out and write down the next time you see that corn again. Again, these processes happen in everybody's human body. So this is a great experiment to know just how long this digestive process takes inside your specific human body. So that's about all the time we have. Zara in the Zoom chat did ask a good question and said, why are water and food split apart in our body? And that's just because we use them for different things. They fuel different processes or reactions inside our bodies that make us stay alive. So our body does need to separate them into their different parts. So we absorb nutrients in the small intestine, water in the large intestine, and then they're used for different processes after that takes place. So great questions, you guys. One last reminder to vote in our poll that will be posted right after this program to tell us what time of day you'd like us to host our Echo Live programs at on the weekdays. We'd love to get your feedback. If you do have any suggestions for programming that you'd like us to try, experiments you want us to try, things that we've done and you have more questions on, we want to provide you with science that you are looking for. So definitely feel free to send that to us in the chat. If you enjoyed this, please share it on your Facebook page. And make sure if you'd like to be notified when Echo Live starts every day that you are not just liking the Michigan Science Center, but that you are also following us on Facebook. So goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Echo Live. We'll see you tomorrow at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day.